Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So our mission today, it's really laser focused. We're plunging into some pretty critical sources, all about emotional conditioning and, well, finding some real freedom. This isn't just, managing stress 101. It's deeper. It's about understanding the roots of those really deep, sometimes destructive, negative emotions.
Yeah, and figuring out how to genuinely break free from them.
Right.
It's really an exploration into why we suffer, isn't it? Even when consciously we just want peace. We're looking at these pervasive, often unconscious mechanisms that kind of hold us captive.
Like invisible strings.
Exactly. And we're focusing specifically on this idea of accumulated emotional pain, this thing that builds up, and how it ends up dictating our behavior, our relationships, often without us even realizing it.
Okay, so let's just jump right into the core problem. Because honestly, this feels universal. I mean, we've all been there, haven't we?
Honestly.
That horrible, just overwhelming gut feeling of being completely trapped, totally caught in the grip of some powerful negative emotion. Let's talk about anger, that really intense, consuming kind.
Yeah, the kind that feels like it's generating its own weather system inside you.
Totally.
And the sources we looked at, they don't just talk about it as a simple feeling like, I'm angry. They see it as this corrosive, self-sustaining loop.
A loop. How so?
Well, it starts with the emotion itself, but let's stick with anger for now. That powerful feeling hits, and bam, it immediately hooks up with a thought, or, what we often call the story.
Ah, the narrative. The why I'm right to be this furious story.
Exactly. The emotion, it's like this massive generator just pouring energy into that story. Suddenly you have this absolute rock-solid certainty about why you're angry, who's wrong, how completely justified your outrage is.
Makes sense.
And then this story, this narrative you're running internally, or maybe even telling everyone.
Yeah, complaining about it.
It then dumps even more energy back into the emotion. It fuels the fire.
Yeah.
Makes the anger stronger.
So you obsess. You replay the scene. You practice your comeback lines. You vent to friends. And the result is you just get angrier and angrier. It's described in the sources as, well, frankly, horrible. An incredibly unpleasant place to be.
Definitely horrible. But here's the kicker. Here's the massive paradox we really need to unpack.
Okay.
When you are fully in the grip of that consuming anger, like deep in it,
Yeah.
you actually don't want to let go.
Wait, what? Why? It feels awful.
I know. That's the ultimate twist, isn't it? In this kind of psychological trap. Despite how much you're suffering, despite how destructive it feels, there's this deep, compelling resistance to just releasing it.
Okay, that doesn't make logical sense. Why would anyone, a conscious, intelligent person cling to misery like that?
Because, and this is key, that impulse to hold on, to feel righteous in the outrage, it doesn't come from your true conscious self.
No. Where then?
It comes from the ego. The sources suggest that the ego, which we mistakenly identify as me, sees this temporary, powerful state of being angry and justified as, well, as a strong sense of self.
Ah, so the ego doesn't care if the feeling is good or bad.
Not really, no. It cares that the feeling is strong and that it separates you.
Separates you
from whatever or whoever you perceive as the cause of the anger. The ego loves it, as the sources put it.
Love the drama.
Exactly. It thrives on drama, conflict, strong boundaries built on perceived unfairness. All that stuff solidifies its temporary, limited identity.
So when I'm outraged, I know exactly who I am in that moment.
Precisely. You're the victim or the righteous one or the one who's been wronged. You're definitely separate from the bad guy. The ego craves that separation, and the anger gives it structure, certainty.
Wow. So for the ego, letting go of the anger feels like dissolving, like a threat to its existence.
You got it. Starving that conflict feels like a death threat to the ego.
So the clinging isn't really me clinging to misery. It's the ego clinging to the anger because it sees that energy as vital reinforcement, like scaffolding for its identity.
Perfectly put. Which means if we want real freedom, we have to look much deeper than just the surface anger or even the ego's defensive moves.
We need to go to the root.
Yes. And that brings us to the central concept for this deep dive, the real root of this whole emotional entanglement, the pain body.
The pain body.
Yeah.
So let's unpack that. What exactly is the pain body, according to these sources?
The definition they give is actually starkly simple. It's an old emotion that still lives in you.
An old emotion living in me.
Yeah. Think of it as accumulated, trapped, negative emotional energy. It exists almost like a semi-autonomous energy field within your system.
So it's not just a memory of being hurt or angry.
No, it's more than memory. It's the actual energy of that past pain, anger, grief, fear, resentment. that was generated at some point but never fully processed, never fully released. It got frozen in time, and it's still residing within you.
Okay. Where does this reservoir of stuck energy come from?
The origins can be complex, but typically this buildup starts very early on.
Childhood.
Often, yeah. The sources point to childhood experiences, moments of trauma, maybe emotional neglect, deep misunderstandings, where as a child, you just didn't have the capacity to process the intensity of the suffering.
So the energy just stuck around.
It didn't dissolve, didn't release, it became trapped. And, for people open to a broader spiritual view, the sources do mention this accumulation can sometimes even connect back to energy patterns from past lifetimes. Adds
Right.
another layer, perhaps inherited or deeply embedded pain. But honestly, you don't need to subscribe to that to understand how it works right now in your present life.
Right. So regardless of the deep origin story, what we're dealing with is a real accumulated kind of energetic weight inside us.
Yes, exactly, a weight. And this pain body, it exists in two main states, critically important states.
Okay, what are they?
Most of the time, it's dormant, it's quiet, you hardly feel its presence, maybe just a kind of low-grade anxiety sometimes, or an underlying dissatisfaction you can't quite pin down.
Just humming in the background.
Pretty much. However, and this is a big choice, however, in some people, maybe due to severe or repeated trauma, the sheer volume of this accumulated pain is huge. The sources describe their pain body as very, very heavy.
Very heavy. What does that feel like?
It creates a genuine energetic pull, almost a physical gravity. It can manifest as chronic low mood, pervasive anxiety, a sense of being constantly weighed down, even when things externally seem okay.
That distinction feels important. The difference between someone with a light, occasionally triggered pain body and someone carrying a really heavy one.
It's crucial. It helps explain why some people seem perpetually burdened, right? Even when life circumstances improve.
Okay, so that's dormant. What's the second state?
The second state is active. This is when the pain body suddenly gets triggered.
By what?
Could be anything, really. A specific event, a phrase someone uses, a memory popping up, or, and this is very common, an interpersonal conflict.
Relationship drama.
Often, yeah. And here's the key point. When it wakes up, when it becomes active, it has one single kind of terrifying goal.
Which is?
It comes alive in order to feed on more drama and more pain.
Feed. It needs to eat. Like an energy vampire.
That's a pretty good analogy, actually. It needs misery to maintain its structure, its existence.
Okay, how does it feed? We talked about that loop, the emotion-thought loop.
Right. The pain body orchestrates that. It feeds by essentially forcing the host, you, the person, to seek out and consume the exact same kind of negative vibrational frequency that it's made of.
Wow. So if my pain body is built of old sadness and anger?
It sends a directive to your mind. Go find something to be sad and angry about now. It demands that negative resonance. It literally feeds on drama, on unhappiness, whatever form it takes. Self-pity, outrage, jealousy, despair. It acts like a magnet for thoughts and situations that carry that same negative energy.
That explains so much. Like why, when someone's already at a really painful state, they sometimes seem to actively push away comfort or sabotage any chance of peace.
Exactly. It's the entity, the pain body, demanding its food, its sustenance.
Okay, this is kind of mind-blowing. To help us, step back from this thing and not feel like we are this awful entity, the sources give a really powerful visual tool.
They do. They suggest looking at the pain body almost as if it were a little entity, like a little monster or gremlin that lives inside you.
Yeah, gremlin.
Yeah. Externalizing it like that is incredibly helpful. It creates distance. It allows you to observe it rather than automatically thinking, oh God, I am this awful, angry, miserable person.
It shifts the internal dialogue from I am this to I am noticing this.
Precisely. Identification versus observation. And to make this visual even more concrete, the sources point to a really fantastic cultural reference.
Oh yeah? What is it?
The creature Gollum from Lord of the Rings, or sometimes referenced as Golong.
It's Gollum. Wow, okay.
Yep.
How is he connected?
He's cited as basically a perfect personification of the human pain body. His entire existence revolves around his obsession with the ring, right? Which represents the source of both his misery and his identity.
That precious.
Exactly. The sources say you can learn a lot about how the pain body works in us just by watching him, observing his behavior.
Okay, break that down. What specific Gollum behaviors mirror the pain body?
Okay, first, just his constant state of deep internal pain. He's utterly trapped by his misery.
Yeah, he's wretched.
Second, that internal battle he has, the split personality, the slightly gentler Smeagol versus the totally wretched Gollum.
Smeagol and Gollum arguing.
Right. Smeagol is like the original conscious being. Before the ring, the deep pain took over. Gollum is the pain body, fully in charge, warping his thoughts, his language, his whole view of the world.
And the third thing?
His possessiveness and his self-hatred. The pain body inherently hates itself, and so it projects that hatred outward. Onto the world, onto anyone who threatens its grip, which, for Gollum, is anyone who might touch his precious.
So his obsession, that constant internal chatter, they stole it from us. Wicked hobbitses. That's the pain body's voice.
That's the pain body's monologue, yeah. Always seeking to maintain the pain, justify the misery, and keep him separate, alienated from everyone else.
He lives in basically mortal enmity with the world, convinced everyone's out to get his misery identity object.
Exactly. It's a really stunning visual for being completely identified with accumulated, unresolved pain.
Wow. Okay. And this internal battle, this Gollum-like struggle you mentioned, it plays out most dramatically in relationships.
Oh, absolutely. Which brings us right into our next section, how this manifests in relationships. Because the committed relationship, well, it's pretty much the most reliable activation field for the pain body there is.
The ultimate trigger zone.
You could say that. Think about it. When two people fall in love, initially there's so much new, positive, conscious energy flowing. The pain body tends to stay dormant then.
The honeymoon phase.
Right. But once the relationship solidifies, you move in together, maybe sign a lease, get married, whatever. Once that safety and predictability increases, the pain body seems to realize, okay, the stakes are higher now. The potential feeding ground is secure.
And the sources give that scenario, the one that's just incredibly relatable for so many people.
Yeah.
The weird transformation.
Yeah, the story goes like this. You meet someone, fall deeply in love, everything feels amazing, smooth sailing, and then maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months after you commit somehow, boom, the pain body surfaces.
It's a shock, right? The person you thought you knew just seems to disappear.
Totally vanishes. And in their place, suddenly, is this little monster, as the sources put it, someone who's maybe super aggressive or incredibly defensive or awfully angry or maybe intensely withdrawn and depressed, a monstrous transformation of their personality.
And the immediate natural reaction is often panic, isn't it? Like, oh my God, I made a huge mistake. This person isn't who I thought they were. They're actually terrible.
That's the common interpretation. But what we're learning here is that it's more like the partner you first knew, their conscious self, has been temporarily eclipsed. The pain body has hijacked the emotional driver's seat.
Okay, but here's a question I bet a lot of listeners are thinking. How do you know it's the pain body and not just, my partner being a jerk or just having a normal bad day, a normal conflict?
That's a really important distinction to make. Great question.
Doesn't calling it the pain body risk becoming a kind of spiritual bypass, an excuse for bad behavior?
It could, if misused. But the distinction, the sources suggest, lies in the quality and intensity of the takeover. Normal conflict, usually it's tied to something specific, a rational problem you can actually discuss, like finances or chores or different priorities. A pain body activation feels different. It's often sudden, wildly disproportionate to whatever triggered it, and it carries this intensity that feels, well, alien. Alien to the person's usual character. It's like a surge of raw, unprocessed old pain erupting. The entity, the gremlin, it doesn't really care about the overdue bill itself. It cares about the feeling of, say, abandonment or injustice that the bill triggers from the past.
Ah, so the trigger isn't the cause, it's just the key turning in the lock. The real fuel is the old accumulated pain that finally feels safe enough in the committed relationship to come out and demand food.
Exactly. And once it's active, this entity is disturbingly strategic. It knows the landscape of the relationship, the emotional weak spots, often better than the conscious person does.
How so?
It starts actively pressing the buttons. It knows exactly which buttons to push on the other person to guarantee getting the negative reaction it needs to feed.
It targets the vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
It knows just the right word or the tone of voice or the sensitive subject that will inflict the most pain.
It will say just the right thing that is hurtful. Not because the person deep down consciously wants to hurt their partner, but because the entity requires the drama, the pain, the negative emotional energy that the hurtful reaction provides.
So my pain, my resulting anger or defensiveness or tears, that's literally food for my partner's pain body.
That's its fuel. Its caloric intake, if you like.
Wow. And this naturally just sets up this awful unconscious dance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The pain body in one person deliberately tries to wake up the pain body in the other person.
Who, let's be honest, almost certainly has one too. We all carry some accumulated pain.
Right.
So it becomes this dance of mutual triggering, mutual unconsciousness. That's why drama periodically happens in relationships, sometimes seemingly out of nowhere. These two people who are deeply in love can suddenly become like mortal enemies for a few hours or even days.
Locked in this state of intense, consuming hatred or bitterness.
Completely caught in the grip of their respective pain bodies. They're not really relating as themselves anymore. They're vessels for this ancient, unresolved suffering that's now battling it out.
Okay, then we get to the aftermath. They fight, they rage, they exhaust themselves, and eventually the intensity kind of burns out.
It subsides, yeah, and they gradually wake up again. But, and here's another crucial distinction from the sources. They don't usually wake up into enlightened consciousness.
No, they just
wake up back into normal unconsciousness.
Okay, can we clarify those terms? What's the difference between being deeply unconscious during the fight and being in normal unconsciousness afterwards?
Good point. Deep unconsciousness is when the pain body is fully active, fully in control. The person has basically zero self-awareness in that state. They are literally possessed by that old emotional energy, rational thought, forget it. They're operating purely from reactive, accumulated pain.
Got it. Like being drunk on old anger.
Yeah, that's a decent analogy. Now, normal unconsciousness, that's the default state for most of us, most of the time. It means we're identified with our surface thoughts, our busy minds, our roles, parent, employee, etc., our daily worries and plans. We're generally functional, maybe even kind, but we lack presence. We're not consciously aware of the deeper energetic currents, like the dormant pain body flowing beneath the surface. We're sort of on autopilot.
Okay, so after the big pain body fight, they wake up, but just back to that normal autopilot state.
Exactly. They return to that normal, somewhat distracted state. They make up, maybe they even make love that can be a powerful way to reconnect after the storm. They feel this huge wave of relief.
And often they genuinely can't even remember what the fight was really about.
Right. Because the entity, the gremlin that was actually responsible for all the chaos, has fed and gone back to sleep. It's subsided.
But it's not gone.
No. The pain body is just dormant again, resting. And here lies the danger, especially regarding the frequency of these episodes. The sources give a really stark warning here. If the intervals between these pain body blowups get shorter and shorter, if the time it takes for the gremlin to recharge and come out again gets faster, that, they say, is often the beginning of the end of the relationship.
Wow.
Because it means the pain body is essentially taking over the house. The baseline emotional safety, the positive energy that was needed to keep it dormant, is just eroding away. The entity is becoming the dominant force in the partnership more often than not.
And the tragedy is, people going through this often don't see the mechanism. They just think, my partner is this angry monster, or I am this constant victim. They don't realize they're dealing with an energetic parasite, essentially.
Exactly. They identify the person with the pain body's behavior. And that's why the only real way out, the only way to break this cycle, is through developing conscious presence.
Okay, so that leads us perfectly into the most critical part, really, the practice of presence. If the relationship is the battlefield, how do we actually fight back? Or rather, how do we stop fighting and introduce presence to starve this pain body?
Right. The first step, the absolute non-negotiable starting point, is recognition.
Seeing it for what it is.
Yes. Once you can recognize the pattern, once you can spot the entity, the gremlin, as it starts to stir, that, the sources say, is the beginning of the end of the pain body.
But it's not enough to recognize it afterwards, is it? Like, oh yeah, that was my pain body yesterday.
No, that's helpful for understanding, but the real transformation happens when you recognize it as it arises, in the moment. And that requires being fiercely, consciously present right when that energy starts to shift.
Okay, where's the easiest place to start practicing this recognition? Is it easier to spot the gremlin in myself first, or in someone else?
The sources suggest that, initially at least, the easiest and maybe safest place to begin is by recognizing it externally.
In my partner, for example.
Yeah, or a friend or family member. You consciously step back, create a little distance internally, and just observe the phenomenon. Ah, there's her pain body, or, okay, there it is, starting up.
Why is looking outward easier?
Because it immediately creates that intellectual and energetic space. You're observing it, not being swept away by it quite so easily. It helps you stop feeding it almost instantly because you're not taking it personally in the same way.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm.
But then comes the huge challenge, right? If I'm trying to stay present while my partner is, deep in their pain body and throwing all that negativity at me,
That's the crucible. That's the real test.
how do you handle that? You're required in that moment to be exponentially more present than usual, just to not get sucked in.
It is the ultimate spiritual workout, no doubt. The sources say you have to consciously turn up the dimmer switch on your own awareness, become the witness, the observer, instead of just reacting and getting dragged down to that same low vibrational level of unconsciousness.
Because if you react with your own anger or defensiveness,
You immediately feed their pain body, and you almost certainly activate your own. Game over. You're both down the rabbit hole.
so it's like maintaining your own frequency, your own conscious vibration against this really strong negative gravitational pull from the other person's activated pain body.
Exactly. And the key is understanding, deeply knowing in that moment that you are observing the other person's accumulated pain. You are seeing the gremlin. And that pain, that gremlin, is not who or what they actually are in their being.
It's not their true self.
No, it's something that has temporarily possessed them right now.
And if I can hold on to that awareness,
If you can maintain that presence, that non-judgmental observation, the whole dynamic shifts. You stop reacting to the pain body's attacks as if they were coming from your partner's real being. You stop arguing back. You stop defending yourself against the accusations of the gremlin. You simply observe the energetic storm. You hold the space. Because without getting new negative energy from your reaction, the pain body has nothing left to consume. It might rage for a bit, but eventually it has to subside.
okay, that sounds incredibly difficult in the heat of battle.
Yeah.
Is there anything couples can do to prepare for this? Like practice when things are calm?
Absolutely. The sources strongly recommend setting up a practical agreement, something you discuss and agree on when you are both relatively conscious when the gremlins are asleep.
Turning the relationship itself into a kind of presence training ground.
Exactly, a shared practice.
Okay, what does this agreement look like? What do you actually agree to do or say?
Well, first, you both have to acknowledge the reality of the pain body. You look back at past fights and agree, okay, that wasn't really you, that was the entity. You name it.
Depersonalize the past events.
Yes. Then you agree that next time, the very next time, if one partner sees the pain body starting to arise in the other, they will point it out. But, and this is crucial, neutrally, without blame or accusation.
Okay, neutrally is key. Because if I say, hey, your pain body's acting up again, that's probably going to trigger you even more, right?
Totally counterproductive. So you need to agree beforehand on a specific neutral sign or signal, something that bypasses the ego and the rational mind.
Like a secret code?
Kind of. It could be a silly code word you both agree on, something completely unrelated to the conflict, like just saying banana, or maybe gremlin alert.
Banana.
Or it could be nonverbal. A specific hand gesture you only use for this, a gentle tap on the arm. The goal is just to interrupt the unconscious momentum before the pain body fully takes hold.
And what about the actual words if you need to say something? How do you phrase the alert so it doesn't inflame things?
You use language that depersonalizes it, instead of, you're being ridiculous again, which is pure accusation.
Yeah, bad idea.
You might say something like, honey, I'm noticing some really heavy energy starting to rise right now. Or even focus on yourself. Wow, I feel that old fear activating in me. Perhaps the most helpful thing is just, hey, I think we might be having a pain body flare-up here. Can we just pause and take 10 conscious breaths together?
That gives the other person a chance to shift focus from the story of the conflict to the actual energy they're feeling.
Exactly. It brings awareness back to the present moment, back to the body.
But this whole agreement, this whole strategy, it really hinges on catching it super early, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You have to spot the very beginning of the activation.
Right at the start. You have to become sensitive to the subtle shift, the first little jab, the first change in tone of voice, maybe the first clenching you see in their jaw or shoulders.
Because if you miss that tiny window at the beginning,
the whole dynamic changes drastically. And this is the massive caveat, the big warning sign in the sources. Once the pain body has fully taken over, once the gremlin is in the driver's seat, there is absolutely no point arguing with it. Rational arguments, explanations, justifications, completely pointless. Worse than pointless, actually.
why?
Because the person is no longer capable of hearing you rationally. They are operating from deep unconsciousness. You are literally no longer talking to your loved one.
Who am I talking to?
You're talking to the entity, to the gremlin that's wearing their face and using their voice.
Chilling. Okay, so what happens if I try to point it out too late? Say the fight's already raging, and I say, this is your pain body.
Oh, the sources are very clear on this. The pain body has a powerful defense mechanism. If you try to call it out after it's already established, it will immediately speak back through the person with hostility and projection.
What does that sound like? What will the gremlin say?
It's entirely defensive, accusatory, and designed to deflect any awareness away from itself. It'll lash out with things like, "How dare you say it's my pain body?" Or the classic, "Look at your own pain body."
The projection move.
Exactly. Or, "You're just projecting. It's not me. It's yours. It's always yours."
Wow. The gremlin uses psychological warfare to protect its food source, the drama, the negativity.
Absolutely. It knows instinctively that if its existence is acknowledged calmly and consciously, its energy will start to dissipate. It will starve.
Yeah.
So it has to attack the messenger, discredit the observation, and defend its temporary possession of the host at all costs.
So at that stage, if the gremlin is fully active and fighting back, what do I do?
Your focus has to shift entirely. It's no longer about trying to wake your partner up. It's entirely about maintaining your own presence, your own conscious frequency. You cannot engage the gremlin in battle.
Don't feed the troll or the gremlin.
Precisely. You can only maintain your own awareness, refuse to be drawn into the fight, and thereby deny the entity the negative energy reaction it craves. The pain body might resolve, but if it has nothing external to feed on, it will eventually exhaust itself and subside.
Okay. This whole practice, recognizing it, staying present under fire, dealing with the gremlin's counterattacks, it sounds incredibly challenging. It's real work.
It is. Deep work.
So why should someone who already feels burdened by all this emotional pain take on this difficult path? What's the payoff? Is there a silver lining here?
There is. And it's perhaps the most profound and motivating insight from the sources. The path to freedom, the way out of this cycle of emotional conditioning, healing those triggers, dismantling the pain body. It is paved entirely by cultivating this conscious presence.
Presence is the path and the destination, in a way.
You could say that. And here's the really interesting twist, the silver lining you asked about.
Yeah.
The suffering itself becomes the catalyst. People who possess these heavy pain bodies we talked about earlier.
The ones who suffer a lot.
Yes. They often end up having a stronger motivation to awaken spiritually than people who have relatively light, manageable pain bodies.
Wait, that seems backwards. Wouldn't more pain make it harder?
You'd think so.
Yeah.
But the sources argue it's because they reach a point of such profound, repeated, intolerable suffering that they just hit a wall. They reach a point where they genuinely just can't stand it anymore.
The pain becomes unbearable.
Exactly. Whereas someone with a milder pain body might be able to manage it, rationalize it, avoid the deep discomfort for decades, maybe their whole life. The problem stays dormant, or at least manageable. But for those carrying a heavy load, the pain is so frequent, so consuming, that it forces a fundamental, desperate question. There has to be another way. There must be a way out of this hell.
So the sheer weight of the suffering acts like a pressure cooker, forcing an opening in their consciousness.
Precisely. The pain body, the very thing designed to trap them in misery, ironically becomes the pressure needed to crack open the shell of the ego and force the expansion of consciousness, the search for genuine liberation. The intensity of the pain itself drives the spiritual quest.
So suffering becomes the teacher.
In a very real way, yes. The urgency created by the pain body's relentless attacks forces the individual to seek presence, to learn presence, because the alternative, continuing to live possessed by the gremlin, is simply too painful to endure any longer.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive, it's really offered a completely different way to look at our negative emotions. Not as character flaws, not as who we are, but as these accumulated energy structures, these gremlins, fighting for their survival inside us.
Yeah, old energy patterns seeking more of the same energy.
And the key takeaway, the absolute core message seems to be presence. When that negative energy starts to shift, whether in you or someone else, the practice is recognize the gremlin, maintain your conscious presence, and consciously refuse to feed it the negative reaction it craves.
Don't argue with it. Don't justify yourself to it. Just see it, observe it. Accept that it's present in the energy field right now.
And then immediately disconnects from the story it's trying to sell you.
Yes. Bring your focus back to the raw energy underneath the story. Feel it in your body without judgment. That's where the power lies.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you, the listener, with the direct invitation, a little experiment for the coming week.
A week of conscious observation.
Think about the relationships in your own life, or even just observe your own internal state when difficult emotions arise. Can you start to identify this signature trigger, that specific thing that almost always seems to open the door for your pain body, or perhaps your partners?
What is it? Is it something specific about money? Or feeling criticized? Is it a particular tone of voice someone uses? Or that feeling of being ignored or disregarded? Try to pinpoint that specific, consistent trigger point, that first thing that reliably kicks off the reaction.
Because recognizing that initial trigger, that's your early warning system. That's the first concrete step toward catching the pain body before it hijacks your system completely. So this week, just observe. Notice that subtle shift in energy when the trigger hits.
That recognition, that noticing is your pathway to presence.
And ultimately, presence is the pathway to freedom.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the pain body.
Really fascinating stuff. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.